The crosshairs settled on the forehead of a man who had no idea he was already dead. Elle Ashford's finger rested against the cold steel of Vigilance's trigger guard. The Remington 700 was an extension of her nervous system now, had been for 22 years. She could feel the rifle's heartbeat syncing with her own, 62 beats per minute, steady as a metronome, even as the man in her scope laughed and adjusted the PK machine gun mounted on his technical. He was 1,847 meters away, almost exactly 1 mile plus change. Through the Schmidt and Bender 5-25x56 scope, she could see the tobacco stain on his teeth, the prayer beads wrapped around his trigger hand, the confidence of a predator who believed himself invisible. But Ghost Hawk saw everything. She didn't take the shot. Not yet, because something was wrong. The militia fighters, she counted 14 visible, estimated another 6 to 10 in the tree line, weren't patrolling. They weren't setting up a defensive position. They were waiting, patient, disciplined, and their kill zones overlapped with geometric precision that spoke of military training, not backward insurgency. This was a kill box, and 6 men were walking directly into it. Elle shifted her Leupold Mark IV spotting scope 3 degrees east and felt her stomach drop to the mountain. Navy SEALs. She recognized the loadout before she saw the Trident patches. Multicam uniforms. HK-416S with Geisel rails. PVS 31 night vision mounted on Ops Corps. Helmets pushed back for daylight movement. They moved in a modified wedge formation through the alpine meadow below. Textbook, confident, completely unaware that death was waiting in the ridgelines. Idiots, she whispered. Her voice was rust and gravel, unpracticed. She hadn't spoken to another human being in 19 months. The SEALs were maybe 20 minutes from the engagement zone. The militia had overlapping fields of fire from 3 elevated positions. 2 PKM teams, 1 DSHK heavy machine gun, at least 4 RPG-7s that she could identify. The moment those operators crossed a creek bed at the meadow's northern edge, they'd be walking into a crossfire designed to ensure 0 survivors. Elle's hand found the satellite phone in her pack. She could call it in. Anonymous tip to JSOC. Let the machine handle it. But the machine would take 45 minutes minimum to scramble QRF assets from Mountain Home. The SEALs would be dead in 22. She could break radio silence. Her old frequencies might still work. Someone might listen. Or someone might trace the signal back to the woman who was supposed to be dead. The stopped pocket watch pressed against her chest, cold and accusatory. Garrett's watch, frozen at 0347, the moment her old life ended and this exile began. If that opening hooked you, trust me, this story only gets more intense. Subscribe now for more real stories of courage and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. Now, let me take you back to what happened next. Elle Ashford had been many things. Daughter of a Marine Corps legend. Youngest female graduate of Scout Sniper School. The shooter who'd made a 2,430-meter kill shot in the mountains of Afghanistan that still held the Corps record. Wife, mother, for exactly 7 minutes. Now she was a ghost, living in a hand-built cabin in the sawtooth wilderness of Idaho, surviving on hunting and isolation, and the kind of grief that didn't heal, just calcified into something you could almost live with. She'd chosen this exile. After Syria, after losing everything that mattered, the military believed she was dead. Her father believed she was dead. The world believed Ghost Hawk had died in a helicopter crash in the Mediterranean, along with her husband and their premature baby girl, who never drew her first breath outside the womb. Some days Elle believed it too. But right now, 6 men were about to die, and her hands remembered what her heart had tried to forget. She made her decision in the space between heartbeats. Elle secured Vigilance across her back and began moving, not toward the SEALs, toward the high ridge that would give her a shooting position on all 3 militia positions simultaneously. It was 2,300 meters away, a brutal climb through shale and deadfall, but it was the only angle that would let her engage all threats before they could concentrate fire on the operators below. She had 19 minutes. The Kestrel 5700 Elite weather meter bounced against her hip as she ran. Wind out of the northwest at 7 knots, gusting to 12. Humidity 34%. Density altitude 6,847 feet. Her brain automatically began calculating holdovers and windage adjustments for targets she hadn't even ranged yet. 22 years of training didn't disappear just because you wanted it to. 16 minutes into her climb, her boots found the granite outcropping she'd identified from below. Perfect prone position, natural concealment from the eastern ridge, clear sight lines to all three militia positions. She dropped into the snow and began building her hide, a process that should have taken 30 minutes, compressed into 90 seconds of desperate efficiency. Range card sketch from memory and visual estimation. Vigilance deployed on the Harris bipod, reckoning stage 3 feet to her left as backup. Suppressor threaded onto the muzzle, a Thunder Beast Arms Ultra 9 that would reduce her signature but not eliminate it entirely. Through the scope, she found the SEALs again. They'd stopped at the creek's edge. One of them, the team leader, based on his positioning, was gesturing eastward. Maybe they'd sensed something. Maybe God had whispered in someone's ear. Elle keyed her emergency radio, breaking 19 months of silence. Unidentified SEAL element. This is Sierra 1. You're walking into a prepared ambush. I say again, you're walking into a prepared ambush. 14 plus hostiles in elevated positions on your northeast, northwest, and due north. Recommend immediate withdrawal to the south. Acknowledge. Silence. Then a voice, young, cocky, absolutely certain of itself. Sierra 1, this is Viper 6. We don't have any friendly snipers in this AO. Identify yourself or clear this frequency. Viper 6, I'm telling you there are machine gun positions dug into those ridgelines. You cross that creek, you die. A different voice now. Older, more amused and concerned. Ma'am, we appreciate the intel, but this is a classified special operations mission. We got eyes in the sky and assets on standby. We know what we're walking into. Ma'am, Elle's jaw tightened. She'd heard that dismissive tone before. Throughout her entire career, from men who couldn't believe a woman had made shots they'd never dream of attempting. Your eyes in the sky are wrong. I'm looking at a DSHK at your 2 o'clock, 1,640 meters from your current position. If you can see that from your drone feed, then by all means proceed. Static. Then, there's nothing at that position. We've been watching this valley for 6 hours. Elle found the DSHK through her scope. The militia had concealed it beautifully. Thermal netting, natural deadfall, snow coverage that broke up the weapon's signature. From directly above, it would look like a fallen tree. From her angle, at 2,100 meters and 43 degrees offset, she could see the barrel poking to the camouflage like a snake waiting to strike. They're using thermal masking. New generation stuff. Russian origin, probably. Lady, I don't know who you are or how you got this frequency, but we don't take tactical advice from random civilians. Viper 6 out. The radio went dead. Elle watched the SEALs begin moving again. The team leader, Viper 6, made a hand signal. Wedge formation tightened as they approached the creek. 12 minutes to contact. She had tried. She had warned them. They had chosen not to listen. The old Elle, Captain Ashford, Ghost Hawk, the woman who followed orders and trusted the system, would have respected that choice, would have maintained her cover, would have let these men die because they refused to believe a woman could see what they couldn't. But the old Elle had died in Syria. This Elle had nothing left to lose. She began ranging targets. The first shot would determine everything. Elle settled her breathing into the familiar 4-count cycle. Inhale for 4 seconds. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Hold for 4. Her heart rate dropped to 58 beats per minute, the zone where time stretched like taffy, and the impossible became merely improbable. Through Vigilance's scope, she studied the militia commander. He was positioned at the northwestern fire base, 2,247 meters from her hide, the longest shot she'd ever taken outside of control range environment, the kind of distance where a bullet dropped 47 feet from its point of aim and wind could push it 6 feet left or right between muzzle and target. He was also the only target she couldn't kill first. The commander was too far from the engagement zone. If she shot him first, the other militia positions would engage the SEALs before she could transition to the closer threats. She needed to work from near to far. PKM gunner first, then the DSHK crew, then the RPG teams, then the commander. But the commander was smart. He had positioned himself at maximum observation range, where he could control the ambush without exposing himself to return fire. The moment his men started dying, he would rabbit, disappear into the wilderness with the knowledge that Ghost Hawk was still alive, and Elle could not allow that. She made her decision. Unorthodox, insane, exactly the kind of tactical improvisation that had made her legend and gotten her in trouble throughout her career. She would take them all, every shooter, before the SEALs reached the kill zone. The math was horrifying. 14 targets across 3 positions, spanning nearly 700 meters of horizontal distance and 180 meters of vertical elevation. She would need to transition between targets faster than humanly possible, accounting for different ranges, different wind conditions at each elevation, different lead times for moving targets. And she would need to remain invisible, because the moment the militia located her position, she became the primary target. And at 2,100 meters, even a mediocre marksman could walk PKM fire onto her hide within 30 seconds. Elle's hands found Garrett's watch. The metal was warm from her body heat now. She pressed it against her lips, whispered words she hadn't spoken since the day he died. I love you. I'm sorry. Watch over me. Then she went to work. The first shot broke at 14:47 local time. The PKM gunner at the northeastern position, 1,612 meters, elevation 12 degrees below her position, was adjusting his weapon's tripod when the 175-grain Sierra Match King round entered his skull just above the left ear. He dropped without a sound. His assistant gunner didn't even notice. He was looking downrange at the approaching SEALs, counting the seconds until the slaughter began. Elle cycled Vigilance's bolt, brass ejected, fresh round chambered, 2.3 seconds. The assistant gunner was lifting binoculars when the second round took him through the sternum. He fell across his dead partner, the binoculars tumbling down the rocky slope. 2 shots, 2 kills. 3.1 seconds elapsed. She transitioned northwest. The DSHK crew, 3 men, because the Soviet-era heavy machine gun was a beast that required a full team to operate effectively. Range, 1,847 meters. Wind had shifted, now gusting to 14 knots from the west-northwest. Elle's brain calculated the adjustment automatically. 3.2 mils windage, 7.4 mils elevation. The gunner died first. Then the loader, the third man, spotter or security, she couldn't tell, had time to realize something was wrong before round 6 removed the question permanently. 6 shots, 6 kills. 18 seconds elapsed. Through her scope, Elle watched chaos ripple through remaining militia positions. Men were shouting, pointing, trying to identify the threat. But she was 2,100 meters away, using a suppressor that reduced her muzzle signature to a whisper, firing from a concealed position they'd never scouted because no sniper in history had ever engaged from that range. Except one. The RPG teams were next. The first team was at 1,723 meters, hunkered behind a boulder formation that provided excellent cover from the valley below, and zero protection from her elevated angle. The grenadier was already lifting his weapon, preparing to fire blind into meadow where the SEALs had frozen at the sound of distant gunfire. Elle's round caught him mid-rise. The RPG tumbled from his hands, warhead still attached. His partner dove for the weapon, brave or stupid or simply trained, and died reaching for it. The second RPG team had gone to ground. She could see movement behind their cover, but no clean shot presented itself. She waited. 3 seconds. 4. 5. Patience was the sniper's greatest weapon. Not the rifle, not the scope, not the mathematics of ballistics that most people would never comprehend. Patience, the ability to outlast your enemy's discipline. At 7 seconds, one of the RPG teams shifted position, exposing 6 inches of shoulder. Elle adjusted aim, calculated the angle, and fired. The round fragmented against the boulder, sending shrapnel and rock splinters into the hidden space behind. A scream echoed across the valley. Not a kill, but an injury that removed the threat. The last RPG gunner broke cover and ran. 19-year-old kid, probably, terrified, making the mistake that terror always inspired. Elle let him go. He wasn't a threat anymore. He was a warning to anyone who might be watching. Ghost Hawk had returned. Now for the commander. 2,247 meters. The longest shot of her life outside the control conditions of a military range. wind swirling unpredictably at that elevation. Her Kestrel readings were 4 minutes old, essentially useless. She would have to read the mirage through her scope, estimate the crosswind at multiple points along the bullet's flight path, and trust her instincts. The commander was already moving. Smart man. He'd seen his ambush disintegrate in under 40 seconds, and had correctly assessed that remaining in position meant death. He was running northwest, toward a tree line that would provide cover and concealment. Elle tracked him through her scope. Running target. 2,247 meters and increasing. Angle changing. Wind unknown. She had maybe 3 seconds before he reached the trees. "Garrett," she whispered, "help me." The shot broke clean. Perfect trigger press. No disturbance to the rifle's alignment. The round left Vigilance's muzzle at 2,610 feet per second, slower than standard because she was using heavy match ammunition optimized for accuracy over velocity. She had 2.3 seconds of flight time, an eternity in combat, long enough to doubt, long enough to pray. The commander stumbled. Through her scope, Elle watched him go down. Not a headshot. She'd aimed center mass, maximizing her hit probability on a moving target. The round had taken him somewhere in the torso. Left side based on how he fell. He wasn't moving. 12 shots. 11 confirmed kills. 1 wounded. 47 seconds elapsed. Elle exhaled slowly. The familiar post-engagement tremor was already beginning in her hands. Adrenaline crash. The body's way of reminding you that you were human, even when your job required you to be a machine. Through her spotting scope, she found the SEALs. They were still frozen in the meadow, weapons raised, scanning for threats they couldn't identify. One of them was on the radio, probably calling for air support that would arrive 15 minutes too late. Elle keyed her radio one more time. "Viper 6, Sierra 1. Your ambush has been neutralized. 11 Kia, 1 WIA, 1 fled. You're welcome." Silence. Then, "Sierra 1, what the hell just happened? I told you there was a DSHK at your 2 o'clock. You should listen when women give you tactical advice." She could hear the confusion in his voice. The disbelief. "Who are you?" "Nobody. A ghost." Elle began breaking down her hide. Time to move. The gunfire would attract attention. Local law enforcement, federal agencies, maybe more militia. She needed to disappear before anyone could triangulate her position. But as she secured Vigilance across her back and prepared to descend, something stopped her. Movement on the eastern ridge, where she'd seen nothing before. She raised a spotting scope, heart suddenly racing. A sniper, camouflaged so perfectly he'd been invisible until he moved. And he was aiming not at the SEALs, not at the militia positions. He was aiming at her. Elle moved. Pure instinct, honed by 2 decades of combat, and the certain knowledge that hesitation meant death. She threw herself backward off the granite outcropping, tumbling down a snow-covered slope as the rock where her head had been exploded into fragments. The crack of the enemy rifle reached her a half-second later. Supersonic round, large caliber, .338 Lapua or .300 Win Mag, based on the sound signature. Accurate, professional. Someone else was hunting in these mountains today, and they weren't militia. Elle rolled behind a deadfall and assessed. No wound, no blood. Her right shoulder screamed where she'd impacted a boulder during the fall, but nothing was broken. Vigilance had stayed secured across her back. Small miracle. She needed to move. Now, staying still meant dying, but she also needed to understand. The militia ambush was one thing, criminal, but not sophisticated. This sniper was something else entirely. His positioning suggested he'd been watching the entire engagement. He'd held fire while she eliminated the militia, waited until she was exposed and transitioning, then taken a shot. He'd been hunting her specifically, waiting for Ghost Hawk to reveal herself. How? She'd been dead for 3 years, off every grid, living like a hermit in wilderness that didn't show up on satellite surveillance. Unless someone had known she would be here, known there would be an event that would draw her out of hiding. The militia ambush wasn't random. It was bait. Elle's blood ran cold. She moved through the tree line like water, flowing from cover to cover, using every terrain feature to mask her silhouette. Her shoulder throbbed with each motion, but pain was just information. Useful information, actually. It kept her sharp, kept her from overthinking. Behind her, she heard the SEALs engaging. Rifle fire, control bursts. They finally found targets, probably militia survivors she hadn't spotted. Good. It would cover her movement, divide the enemy sniper's attention. But she couldn't rely on that. Elle reached a rocky depression and dropped into it, pulling vigilance from her back. She needed to locate the threat, needed to understand what she was dealing with. Through her scope, she scanned the eastern ridge. Nothing. The sniper had displaced. Smart move, mirroring her own tactics. He wouldn't be where she'd last seen him. She widened her search pattern. North, east, south. There, a shimmer of movement, 1,900 meters away. Different position, higher elevation. He'd anticipated her escape route and repositioned to cut her off. This wasn't a militia fighter. This was a trained professional. Someone who understood sniper versus sniper engagement better than most operators alive. Elle settled her crosshairs on the position. Range was manageable. Wind conditions had stabilized. She had a 60% chance of a first-round hit. But something stopped her. The sniper wasn't shooting. He had her position. He'd tracked her movement, repositioned to engage. He should be firing. Instead, he was waiting. Why? Elle's finger hovered over the trigger. Every instinct screamed at her to fire first, eliminate the threat, survive, analyze later. But Ghost Hawk hadn't survived this long by following instincts alone. She'd survived by seeing what others missed. She forced herself to study the enemy position more carefully. Through the scope, she could make out details now. The ghillie suit's construction, not standard issue, but not amateur either. The rifle, something bolt action, possibly an AXMC based on the barrel profile. The shooter's posture, Elle froze. The shooter's posture was defensive, guarded. The rifle was positioned for immediate engagement, but the body language spoke of uncertainty. Fear, even. Snipers didn't fear their prey. They feared equals. This shooter knew who she was, knew her reputation, and instead of pressing the advantage, he was hesitating because he had orders that said capture, not kill. Elle made her decision in a fraction of a second. She burst from cover and sprinted, not away from the sniper, but perpendicular to his line of fire. Maximum speed, maximum unpredictability. Serpentine pattern that would make target acquisition impossible at this range. A round cracked past her, close enough to feel the displaced air. Then another, both missed by feet, not inches, proof that her theory was correct. A sniper of this caliber, at this range, against a running target, should have been able to hit center mass on at least one of those shots. He was shooting to miss, hurting her. Toward what? Elle reached the granite formation, and Dub behind it, gasping for breath. The altitude was brutal, nearly 8,000 feet, thin air that burned her lungs and made her heart pound like a war drum. Through a gap in the rocks, she scanned downslope. The SEALs were still engaged, pinned by someone she couldn't see. The militia ambush had become a three-way battle. Original ambushers, the SEAL team, and now, whoever these new players were. Elle's mind raced. The pieces were forming a picture she didn't want to see. A rogue sniper who knew who she was. A militia ambush that had been designed to draw her out. An engagement pattern that spoke of capture rather than elimination. Someone had spent significant resources to find Ghost Hawk, and they'd use American special operators as bait, let militia fighters die as disposable pawns, all to flush her from hiding. Who had that kind of reach? That kind of ruthlessness? Captain Ashford. The voice came from behind her. Close. Too close. Elle spun, vigilance rising, and froze. A man stood 10 feet away. Military bearing. Expensive tactical gear. No weapon visible, but that didn't mean unarmed. His face was obscured by a balaclava, but his eyes were visible. Cold. Professional. You're faster than we expected, he said. Most targets take at least 2 minutes to reach this position. You made it in 47 seconds. Impressive, even for someone with your reputation. Who are you? A messenger. My employers have information you need to hear. Information about your husband, about your daughter. Elle's heart stopped. The world contracted to a point. This man, these words, the impossible implications. My husband is dead. My daughter was stillborn. I watched them both. You watch what you were shown. There's a difference. The man reached slowly toward his chest. Elle's finger tightened on the trigger. Easy. I'm just getting a photograph. He produced a small image, wallet size, creased from carrying, and held it up where she could see. Elle's knees buckled. Garrett, alive, older than she remembered, more gray in his hair, more lines around his eyes, but unmistakably her husband. He was holding a child, a little girl, maybe 3 years old, with Garrett's dark eyes and Elle's auburn hair. Rowan, her daughter, the baby she'd held for 7 minutes before the medics told her there was no heartbeat. This photograph was taken 6 weeks ago, the messenger said. Your husband and daughter are alive, Captain Ashford. They've been held in a black site facility in Arizona for the past 3 years, and they need your help. Elle couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The rifle trembled in her hands as everything she believed, everything she'd mourned, everything she tried to bury in 19 months of wilderness exile came crashing down around her. Why? She managed. Why would anyone? Because you're Ghost Hawk. Because your skills are valuable. And because certain people within the defense establishment decided your loyalty could be better ensured through leverage rather than patriotism. The messenger took a step closer. Elle raised a rifle, but her hands were shaking too badly to aim properly. They took your family to control you. They faked their deaths to ensure your silence. And when you disappeared instead of returned to the fold, they decided to find you using unconventional methods. The ambush, the SEALs, bait. They knew you couldn't resist protecting American soldiers. They've been watching this valley for weeks, waiting for the right opportunity. Today was supposed to be simple. You reveal yourself, our sniper team extracts you, and you're reunited with your family in exchange for completing certain missions. What missions? Targets that official channels can't touch. Foreign dignitaries. Protected witnesses. The occasional American citizen who's become inconvenient. The messenger's eyes were flat, unreadable. Your reputation makes you valuable, Captain Ashford. Ghost Hawk never missed. Ghost Hawk never questioned orders. Ghost Hawk was a perfect weapon. And if I refuse, then your husband and daughter remain in custody. Indefinitely. Elle's vision tunneled. Rage and grief and disbelief battled for dominance in her chest. 3 years. 3 years of believing herself alone in the world, of grieving for the family she'd lost, of hiding in these mountains because life without them seemed pointless. And all along, they'd been alive, captive, used as leverage against her. Who? She demanded. Who's responsible? The name won't mean anything to you. A 3-star general with connections to programs that don't officially exist. He operates under the designation architect. He built the system that created your situation, and he's the only one who can release your family. We're in Arizona? The messenger smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Ah, there it is. The Ghost Hawk I was told about. He reached into his vest and produced a small drive. This contains everything you need. Location coordinates, security protocols, guard rotations, entry points. Your husband has been feeding information to our network for 18 months, preparing for the day you come for them. Elle stared at the drive. Why give me this? If your employers want to control me, why hand over the keys to break my family out? Because not everyone in this organization agrees with the architect's methods. Some of us believe your skills could be employed more ethically. And because the men who set up today's operation made a critical miscalculation. What miscalculation? The messenger's smile widened slightly. They assumed you could be captured. I knew better. He tossed the drive at her feet. Free your family, Captain Ashford. Then decide what kind of weapon you want to be. He began walking backward, hands visible. My sniper partner will disengage in 60 seconds. The SEALs are finishing up the remaining militia fighters. They'll want answers you shouldn't provide. I suggest you disappear. Wait! But he was already gone, melting into the tree line like he'd never existed. Elle stood alone in the mountain silence, the drive at her feet and the impossible weight of truth crushing her chest. Garrett was alive. Rowan was alive. And someone was going to answer for every single day of the last 3 years. 47 hours later, Elle Ashford crouched in the Arizona darkness and studied the facility that held her family. The intelligence on the drive had been accurate, frighteningly so. Detailed schematics of a compound hidden in the desert mountains east of Phoenix. Guard rotations updated within the last 72 hours. Access codes that should have been impossible to obtain without inside help. Garrett, her husband, had been working from inside, risking everything to give her a chance. The facility was designated Site Kestrel on official documents, a secure research installation funded through defense contractors with ties to black budget programs. In reality, it was a prison, a cage for assets too valuable to eliminate but too dangerous to release. Elle had spent the drive from Idaho memorizing every detail. 14 guards on rotating shifts, all former special operations, all well-equipped. Electronic surveillance covering 93% of the perimeter. Motion sensors, pressure plates, thermal cameras. A small armory with enough firepower to repel a company-sized assault. But Elle wasn't bringing a company. She was bringing something worse. Ghost Hawk. She'd chosen her entry point 3 hours earlier, a maintenance access tunnel on the facility's eastern side, 37 meters from the main building. The tunnel was designed for utility access, water, power, communications, infrastructure. According to Garrett's intelligence, it was also the weakest point in Site Kestrel's defenses. One guard patrolled the exterior approach. He walked a predictable route, 16 minutes per circuit, 73 seconds of visual coverage on the tunnel entrance. Elle had timed his pattern twice, confirming the window she would need. Now she waited. The desert night was cold, 41 degrees, wind negligible, visibility excellent under the waning crescent moon. She'd left vigilance cached at her infiltration point, too unwieldy for close quarters work. Instead, she carried Reckoning, her secondary Remington 700, broken down in her pack for emergency use. A suppressed Glock 19 rode on her thigh. Knife at her belt, tourniquets, flashbangs, and enough breaching tools to improvise her way through most obstacles. 19 months of exile hadn't dulled her edge. If anything, the solitude had refined it. She'd spent those months hunting elk at 800 meters, maintaining her skills, preparing for a fight she thought would never come. Now it was here. The guard passed. 73 seconds began counting down. Elle moved. She crossed the 37 meters of open ground in 11 seconds, fast but controlled. No silhouette on the horizon. No sudden movements that might trigger peripheral detection. Just a shadow flowing through shadows. The tunnel entrance was secured with a cipher lock, 6-digit combination, changed weekly according to Garrett's notes. Elle entered the code and felt the mechanism release. "Thank you, baby," she whispered. Inside, the tunnel was dark and cramped. Maybe 4 feet wide, 5 feet tall. Elle moved in a crouch, her NVGs painting the space in phosphorescent green. The tunnel extended 93 meters before reaching an access point in the facility's maintenance level. She covered the distance in 3 minutes, pausing every 20 meters to listen. The access point was a heavy steel door with an electronic lock. This code was different, changed daily, part of an algorithm Garrett had spent months decoding. Elle entered the sequence and held her breath. The lock cycled open. She was inside. The maintenance level was industrial. Humming generators, HVAC systems pushing recycled air through aluminum ducts, the subliminal vibration of a facility that never slept. Elle consulted her mental map. Residential quarters were 3 floors up, accessible via service elevator or emergency stairwell. The elevator would be monitored. The stairwell less so. It was designed for emergency egress, not primary movement. Elle found the stairwell access and began climbing. Floor 1 was administrative. Offices dark at this hour, computers sleeping, the detritus of bureaucratic oversight that kept places like this funded without questions asked. She passed without incident. Floor 2 was operations, security monitoring, communications center, briefing rooms. She could hear voices from the comm center, 2 guards discussing something she couldn't make out. She pressed against the wall, breathing through her mouth, and waited until the voices faded. Floor 3 was residential. And suddenly, everything changed. Elle emerged from the stairwell into a corridor that looked like a hospital ward. Soft lighting, neutral colors, doors spaced every 12 feet, identical, numbered, locked from the outside. The air smelled of antiseptic and recycled desperation. This was where they kept the assets, the people too valuable to kill. According to Garrett's intelligence, he and Rowan were housed in room 317, and the corridor left side. Elle moved through the space like a predator, every sense straining for threats. Nothing. The guards were concentrated at the facility's choke points, confident that no one could reach this level without triggering multiple alarms. They didn't know their security had been compromised from within. Room 317. Elle stopped at the door and studied the lock. Electronic, same as the others. But the code was different, changed at Garrett's request, according to the intelligence. A code she already knew. A code she'd worn against her heart for 19 months. 0347, the time on his stop pocket watch. The moment their old life ended, she entered the numbers. The lock clicked open. Elle pushed through the door, Glock raised, ready for anything except what she found. Garrett Ashford, thin-grayed, but unmistakably alive, stood at the window, silhouetted against a faint glow of external lights. He turned at the sound of the door, and for a moment, his face was perfectly blank. Then he recognized her. Elle. His voice cracked. 3 years of captivity had stolen something from it. The confidence, the warmth, but the core was still there. Still him. You came. She couldn't speak, couldn't move. The Glock trembled in her hands as 27 months of grief and loneliness and desperate hope crashed through her all at once. You're alive, she finally managed. I mourned you. I buried an empty casket. I know. Garrett crossed the room in 3 steps and wrapped his arms around her. He smelled different, institutional soap, recycled air, but his embrace was the same. Strong, safe, home. I know what they did, what they made you believe. And I'm so sorry. Rowan, sleeping. He gestured toward a small bed in the corner, and Elle saw her for the first time. Her daughter, 3 years old. Dark curly hair fanned across the pillow. Garrett's nose. Elle's stubborn chin. Perfect. Elle's knees gave out. She sank to the floor beside the bed, reaching out to touch her daughter's face. Real. Warm. Breathing. They told me she was stillborn, Elle whispered. They put her in my arms. She wasn't breathing. She wasn't. They drugged her. Some compound that mimics death for a few minutes. Slowed heartbeat, suppressed respiration. Long enough to convince you. Garrett knelt beside her. They took her before the doctors could examine her properly. They took both of us and made it look like a helicopter accident. Why? Elle's voice was raw, broken. Why go to all this trouble? Because Ghost Hawk is the most valuable sniper asset in American history. And the architect decided that owning your family was more reliable than trusting your patriotism. Elle thought of all the targets the messenger had mentioned. Foreign dignitaries, protected witnesses, American citizens who become inconvenient. The assassination she would have been forced to perform, with her husband and daughter's lives as collateral. Is it over? She asked. Are we getting out of here? Garrett's face darkened. There's a problem. The architect knows you're coming. Elle's blood turned to ice. She pulled back from the bed, instinct screaming. How? The messenger, the man who gave you the intelligence. Garrett's jaw tightened. He wasn't rogue. He was bait. The architect wanted you inside this facility, wanted you to walk into his trap, thinking you had the advantage. Elle processed the implications in seconds. The security had been too light. The codes had worked too easily. The corridor was too empty. She'd been played. We need to move. Now. She lifted Rowan from the bed. The child stirred but didn't wake. Some combination of exhaustion and whatever sedatives they'd been giving her. How do we get out? There's a vehicle bay on the ground floor. 2 trucks, 1 SUV. Keys are kept in the security office on floor 2. That office is staffed. I know. Elle passed Rowan to Garrett. Her daughter was so light. Too light, maybe. 3 years in captivity had cost them all something. Can you carry her? Garrett nodded. His arms closed around the sleeping child like they'd been waiting for this moment. Like everything he'd endured had been building toward holding his daughter while his wife cleared the path to freedom. Stay behind me. No matter what happens, keep moving. If I go down, you won't go down. Elle met his eyes. If I go down, you keep moving. You get her out. Promise me. Garrett's face was stone, but he nodded. Elle led them back to the stairwell. The clock was ticking now. Somewhere in this facility, the architect was watching, waiting for his trap to spring. She needed to move faster than he expected. Floor 2. The corridor was different than before. Lights brighter. The distant sound of boots on concrete. Guards mobilizing. The trap was closing. Elle made her decision instantly. Different route. Emergency exit at the end of this corridor. Leads to the exterior walkway. We'll circle around to the vehicle bay. That walkway is exposed. They'll see us. Then they see us. Better than walking into whatever they've set up in the security office. They moved. Elle led with the Glock, clearing corners, checking sightlines. Garrett followed. Rowan cradled against his chest, moving with the fluid efficiency of a man who'd spent his career in combat zones. The emergency exit was alarmed, but the alarms didn't matter anymore. They knew she was here. Cold desert air hit her face as they emerged onto the walkway. Stars blazed overhead, indifferent to the human drama unfolding below. Elle scanned the rooftops, the shadows, the angles where snipers might hide. Nothing. Yet, vehicle bay is that building northwest corner. Garrett pointed with his chin, arms full of their daughter. Maybe 90 meters. 90 meters of open ground. No cover. Perfect kill box. Elle's sniper brain analyzed the approach. If the architect was as smart as she suspected, he'd have shooters positioned on the main building's roof, covering the vehicle bay approach. She'd be dead before she reached the halfway point. Unless, change of plan. We're not going to the vehicles. What? Elle pointed east, toward the perimeter fence. That ridge. Maybe 400 meters. I cached equipment there before infiltrating. Vigilance. And a vehicle. Old pickup, hidden in an arroyo. She'd planned for contingencies. Always did. The direct approach had been optimistic. This was the backup. 400 meters is a long run. Then we run fast. They ran. The first shots came at 50 meters. Elle heard the crack of suppressed rifles from the rooftop, saw the muzzle flashes like angry stars. She shoved Garrett left toward a drainage ditch and dove after him as rounds chewed the concrete where they'd been standing. You hit? No. Rowan's awake. Elle could hear her daughter crying now. Confused, scared, woken from drug sleep into a nightmare of gunfire and shouting. 3 years old. She should know what bullets sounded like. Keep her quiet. Keep her safe. I'll handle this. Elle rose from the ditch and fired. 2 quick shots toward the rooftop positions. Not aimed, just suppression. She was engaging snipers at 100 meters with a pistol, which was about as effective as throwing rocks. But it would make them flinch by seconds. She grabbed Garrett's arm and pulled him upright. Move. Go. They ran again. Serpentine pattern, unpredictable. Behind them, the rooftop shooters were adjusting, tracking, correcting. A round crack past Elle's head, close enough to feel the shockwave. She ducked, stumbled, kept moving. The perimeter fence loomed ahead. 12 feet of chain link topped with razor wire. Impossible to climb quickly, impossible to breach without tools. Elle had planned for this too. She pulled the small cutting tool from her vest and dropped to her knees at the fence base. The cutter sheared through chain link like butter. 30 seconds of work that felt like hours while rounds sparked off the metal around her. Through. Go. Garrett went first, cradling Rowan against the razor wire. Elle followed, feeling the blades catch her jacket, her arm, something wet and warm soaking her sleeve. The ridge was ahead. Vigilance was waiting. So was her truck. But the desert between was alive with searchlights and shouting voices. Guards were mobilizing, vehicles starting. This way. Elle led them into a wash, using the terrain to mask their movement. Her arm throbbed. The razor wire had cut deeper than she'd realized. But pain was just information. She could bleed later. The truck was where she'd left it, hidden beneath camo netting in a narrow arroyo. A 1998 Ford F-150, rust and determination, invisible to the satellite coverage that watched the facility. Elle threw back the netting and yanked open the driver's door. Get her in the back seat. Buckle her in. Garrett moved to comply, but froze. Elle. His voice had changed. Warning. She turned. A figure stood at the arroyo's edge. Black tactical gear. No visible weapon. Hands clasped behind his back, like a general reviewing troops. The architect, Captain Ashford. His voice was cultured, calm. A voice accustomed to giving orders that reshaped the world. I must confess, you've exceeded my expectations. Most subjects take 3 days to reach this facility. You manage it in two. Elle raised her Glock. Step aside. Or I shoot you where you stand. You could, but then you'd never know the truth. I know enough. You took my family. You made me believe they were dead. You tried to turn me into your personal assassin. All true, but there's more. The architect smiled, thin, reptilian. Do you really think your husband was innocent in this? That he was simply a victim? Elle's aim wavered. Behind her, she heard Garrett Sharpen take a breath. Don't listen to him, Garrett said. He's manipulating you. It's what he does. Perhaps. The architect's eyes never left Elle's face. Or perhaps your husband has been working for me much longer than you realize. Perhaps Syria wasn't tragedy. It was a recruitment opportunity. The words hit like physical blows. Elle's mind flashed to Syria. The mission that went wrong. The ambush they shouldn't have survived. Garrett pulling her from a wreckage. Had it all been staged? He's lying. Garrett's voice was desperate now. Elle, look at me. I love you. I would never. Your husband approached me 6 months before Syria. The architect continued. Relentless. He wanted out. Wanted a comfortable retirement. He offered the most valuable asset in military sniping history as a bargaining chip. No. Elle's voice was barely a whisper. He helped plan the ambush. He ensured you'd be vulnerable. And when the extraction failed, when you were supposed to die and he was supposed to collect his payment, the only variable was your survival instinct. Elle, Garrett's hand touched her shoulder. She flinched away. You lived when you should have died. You killed your way out of that valley when any normal operator would have surrendered. And that changed everything. The architect spread his hands. Your husband became a liability, a witness. So I adjusted the plan. He's lying, Garrett repeated. Everything he says is designed to. I have recordings. The architect's voice cut through. Audio of your husband's original proposal. Timestamps, payment transfers, communications logs. Everything needed to prove that Garrett Ashford sold his wife to a black site program for $2 million and a new identity. Silence. Elle turned slowly to face her husband, the man she'd mourned, the man she'd loved since the day they met at Camp Lejeune. 2 young Marines who saw something in each other that the rest of the world missed. Garrett, his face told her everything. Guilt, shame, desperation, and beneath it all, the terrible truth. It wasn't like that, Garrett said. His voice was hollow, broken. I never meant for you to get hurt. The original plan was different. You were supposed to be extracted, debriefed, released. They told me it would be a few weeks. You sold me. Elle's voice was ice and fire. You made a deal with these people, and you sold your own wife. I was scared. We had a baby coming, and the missions were getting more dangerous. And I kept seeing your face every time I closed my eyes. I kept imagining the day they'd tell me you weren't coming home. Garrett's eyes were wet. I thought if you were out of the field, you'd be safe. You'd be alive. And $2 million didn't hurt. Garrett flinched like she'd struck him. That was wrong. I know it was wrong, but I was going to use it for us, for Rowan, a new life away from all of this. Elle laughed. The sound was harsh, unnatural. A new life built on my blood, on my grief. I never stopped loving you. Garrett stepped closer, ignoring the architect, ignoring the approaching security forces. Everything I've done for the last 3 years, feeding information to the network, decoding the security protocols, helping you get here. That was me trying to make it right. That was me choosing you over them. After they imprisoned you. After your plan fell apart. Yes, Garrett's honesty was brutal. After I lost everything. After I realized what I'd done. Elle, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me spend the rest of my life earning that forgiveness. Elle's Glock was still raised, but her hands were shaking. The target wasn't the architect anymore. It wasn't even Garrett. It was everything she believed. Everything she thought she knew about love and loyalty and the life they'd built together. Touching. The architect's voice cut through the moment, but irrelevant. Captain Ashford, you're surrounded. My extraction team will arrive in 90 seconds. You can surrender now and negotiate terms, or you can die in this arroyo, and I'll find another way to leverage your skills. Elle's training took over. Emotion, betrayal, rage, grief was pushed aside. She had 90 seconds. Garrett was a traitor. The architect was a monster. And somewhere in the truck behind her, her 3-year-old daughter was watching everything unfold. Rowan, that was what mattered, not the past, not Garrett's betrayal, not the architect's schemes. Her daughter. Elle made her choice. She shot the architect. The Glock suppress report was soft, almost gentle, as the 9mm round took him in the left shoulder. Not a kill shot, a message. The architect staggered backward, surprise breaking through his composure for the first time. That was a warning. Elle's voice was steady now. Dangerous. Next one goes through your brainstem. Call off your people. You need me alive. I'm the only one who can. I need my daughter safe. Everything else is negotiable. Elle, advance. Glock centered on his face. Tell your team to stand down. Now. The architect studied her for a long moment. Blood soaked his tactical vest, but his eyes were calculating, measuring. Stand down, he said, keying his radio. All units disengage. Hold positions. Elle could hear the confusion in the responses. Security teams trained to obey, suddenly unsure. Good. Now walk. Slowly. She gestured toward the truck. You're coming with us. As a hostage? As insurance. Until my daughter is somewhere safe, then we'll discuss terms. The architect smiled. Even bleeding, even captured, he seemed amused. You're everything the reports said you were. More, perhaps. It's almost a shame this couldn't have worked out differently. Walk. Elle loaded them all into the truck. Garrett in the passenger seat, silent and broken. The architect in the cargo bed, hands zip-tied, bleeding quietly. Rowan in the back, strapped into a car seat Elle had prepared days earlier. Her daughter was finally awake, staring at her with huge dark eyes that held too much knowledge for a 3-year-old. Mommy, the word shattered something in Elle's chest. Her daughter didn't know her, didn't remember the 7 minutes they'd shared before the world ended. But somehow she knew, yes, baby, I'm your mommy. Elle kissed her daughter's forehead. And I'm never going to let anyone take you away again. The truck roared to life. Elle drove into the desert darkness, leaving Site Kestra behind. The drive to safety took 6 hours. Elle knew routes that didn't exist on maps. Old mining roads, dry creek beds, paths carved by generations of border runners and outlaws. She drove in darkness, NVGs turning the night into day, pushing the old Ford through terrain that would have stopped newer vehicles. No one followed. The architect's stand-down order had bought them time, but it wouldn't last forever. At dawn, they reached a safe house Elle had established years earlier, before Syria, before everything. A cabin in the southern Arizona mountains, stocked with supplies, invisible to the world. She parked the truck and sat for a moment, hands gripping the wheel. What happens now? Garrett asked. His voice was small. I don't know. Elle's honesty surprised her. I don't know anything anymore. In the cargo bed, the architect was unconscious. Blood loss had finally caught up with him. He would need medical attention soon, or he would die. Elle wasn't sure she cared. I meant what I said. Garrett wouldn't look at her. About earning forgiveness. About spending my life making this right. You sold me, Garrett. I know. You traded your wife, the mother of your child, for money and safety. I know. And then you spent 3 years pretending to be a victim while you were actually the architect of our destruction. The architect was your partner. Elle's voice was cold. He imprisoned you because you became inconvenient, not because you were innocent. Silence. The only reason you're still breathing, Elle continued, is because Rowan needs a father, because I won't take that from her. But understand this, we are not the same. We will never be the same. Whatever love existed between us died in Syria, with everything else you destroyed. Garrett's shoulders shook. Silent sobs. Elle felt nothing. You have 2 choices, she said. You can disappear, take a new identity, start over somewhere far away, and live with what you've done, or you can stay. Help me dismantle the program that did this to us. Spend however long it takes to become someone worthy of our daughter's love. And your love. Elle looked at him, really looked, for the first time since entering that room at Site Kestrel. She saw the man she'd married, the sniper who'd saved her life a dozen times, the partner who'd made her laugh, made her feel safe, made her believe in something beyond the mission. She also saw the traitor, the liar, the coward who'd sold her when things got hard. Both men existed in the same body. Both were real. I don't know, she said again. Ask me in 10 years. She got out of the truck and went to retrieve her daughter. 6 months later, the world knew Ghost Hawk was alive, not through official channels. The military still listed Captain Alara Ashford as killed in action, and the bureaucracy was too slow to catch up with reality. The knowledge spread through whispers, through intelligence networks, through the special operations community that had mourned her and now wondered at her resurrection. Elle didn't care. She had stopped hiding. The cabin in the mountains had become a headquarters, not just for her, for the team that had coalesced around her in the months since Arizona. Operators she'd served with, contacts from the intelligence community, even a few active duty personnel who'd been disgusted by what they learned about programs like the Architects. Ghost Team, they called themselves. Part joke, part badge of honor. And at the center of it all was a 3-year-old girl who was learning to laugh again. Rowan Ashford had adapted with the resilience that only children possess. The nightmares were fading. The fear of strangers was slowly transforming into curiosity. She'd learned her mother's name, her father's face, the rhythms of a life that was dangerous but also, somehow, safe. Garrett was there too, earning his redemption one day at a time. He'd chosen to stay, chosen a harder path, the endless work of rebuilding trust that might never fully return. He slept in a separate room. He didn't touch Elle unless invited. He existed in a state of perpetual probation, aware that forgiveness was a process measured in years, not gestures. But he was present for Rowan, for the mission, for the slim possibility of something more. Elle wasn't sure how she felt about that. Some days, watching him read to their daughter, she caught glimpses of the man she'd loved. Other days, the betrayal was fresh, and she couldn't look at him without tasting bile. Maybe that was okay. Maybe love was messier than the story suggested. The Architect had survived. Barely. Elle had delivered him to contacts within the intelligence community who had no love for black site programs that weaponize American families. He was currently a guest of the Justice Department, singing like a bird in exchange for reduced sentencing. His network was collapsing. Names were being named. Programs were being shuttered. The system that had stolen 3 years of Elle's life was being dismantled piece by piece. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was a start. On a morning in late April, Elle sat on the cabin's porch and watched the sun rise over the mountains. Rowan was still sleeping. Garrett was running perimeter security, a task he'd taken on with the desperation of a man seeking purpose. The team was scattered across the property, each pursuing their own preparations. In a few hours, they would begin their next mission. Another black site, another group of captives who'd been erased from the world. Ghost Team specialized in ghosts, in bringing people back from the dead. Elle's hands found Garrett's pocket watch, still stopped at 0347, still pressed against her heart. She considered throwing it away 100 times, considered burying it with a past that had ended in Syria. But she couldn't, because that moment, the moment everything changed, was also the moment that had led her here, to this porch, to this life, to the daughter sleeping peacefully inside. The past was a weapon. You could let it destroy you, or you could use it to build something new. Footsteps on the porch. Rowan, barefoot in her pajamas, climbing into her mother's lap with the confidence of a child who knows she is loved. Mommy, the sun is pretty. Yes, baby, it is. They sat together, watching the light transform the world. Darkness receding. Colors bleeding into the sky. A new day beginning. Why do you look at Daddy's watch so much? Rowan asked. Elle considered the question. Considered the truth. Too complicated for a 3-year-old, and the lie. Too easy. She settled on something in between. Because it reminds me that time is precious. That every moment matters. That we should never waste a chance to be with the people we love. Rowan thought about this with the gravity of a child processing big ideas. Do you love Daddy? Elle's breath caught. She looked toward the perimeter, where Garrett's distant figure moved through the morning mist. The traitor, the father, the man who was trying so hard to become someone new. I'm learning to, she said finally. It's complicated, but I'm trying. Rowan nodded, satisfied. 3-year-old wisdom accepting adult complexity. I love you, Mommy. I love you too, baby. More than anything in the world. They watched the sunrise together, mother and daughter, ghost and heir. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called. The sound echoed across the mountains, wild and free and alive. Elle Ashford smiled. She wasn't a ghost anymore. She wasn't a weapon or an asset or a puppet dancing on strings held by men who thought they owned her. She was a mother, a leader, a survivor, and she was just getting started. The sun rose higher, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Elle held her daughter close and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. It was fragile, tentative, weighed down by grief and betrayal, and the knowledge of how quickly everything could fall apart. But it was there, real and warm and growing stronger every day. Behind her, the cabin door opened. Garrett stepped onto the porch, paused when he saw them. "Beautiful morning," he said quietly. Elle met his eyes, saw the uncertainty there, the desperate hope that mirrored her own. "Yes," she said, "it is." She didn't invite him closer, but she didn't send him away either. Progress, measured in moments, not miles. Rowan squirmed in her lap. "Daddy, come see the sun." Garrett looked at Elle, waiting. She nodded. He crossed the porch and sat beside them, not touching but present, part of the picture, even if the frame was still being built. The three of them watched the sunrise together, a family shattered and rebuilding, a future uncertain but possible. Ghost Hawk had returned from the dead, and she brought something back with her. Not just vengeance, not just survival, purpose. The story of Captain Alara Ashford wasn't ending. It was transforming, from tragedy to mission, from loss to legacy. Whatever came next, whatever battles awaited, whatever enemies emerged, she would face it as she faced everything, with precision, with patience, with the knowledge that she was no longer alone. Ghost Team was ready. And the hunt was just beginning. If this story kept you engaged, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. Tell me, if you discovered your partner had betrayed you but was now genuinely trying to make amends, would you give them a second chance? Subscribe if you haven't already. More stories like this are coming. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one.